the end of the day, we are going to deliver. We live every day with the concern of we got to execute, we got to execute, we got to execute. And as long as we do that, nobody will be disappointed. We have the sites, we have the capital, we have the people, and we have the customers. So I just need to worry about those four things, and as long as I do that, we're going to win.
So TeraWulf came out and acquired the Hawesville site in February of this year, and then less than 6 months later, announcement, fully contracted lease with Anthropic. How are you guys able to just move this fast?
I think it was three things.
Welcome back to the Silicon Stack podcast. Today, I am very excited to be joined by an individual who's running one of the most interesting power and AI infrastructure companies in the market right now. He's a graduate of the Naval Academy and a former naval officer, and he spent decades working on power infrastructure, building and developing it before starting the company that he founded recently, which we're going to get into. They say that beauty is in the eye of the beholder, but this man actually believes that beauty is in turn a 20-year, $19 billion contract with Anthropic. He's the co-founder, chairman, and CEO of TeraWulf, Mr. Paul Prager. Paul, thank you so much for joining the show, and also thank you for your service.
Thanks very much. Happy to be here.
Great. So let's get right into it. TeraWulf right now is going through a pretty remarkable transition from a Bitcoin miner to now a pure AI infrastructure company, although most investors that are close to the company know that TeraWulf has always been a power company. If we go back to 2023, early 23, the stock price was trading at around 50 cents. You've seen it push as high as $30 just about a month and a half, 2 months ago in June. So you figure a $100 million company to $14 billion. How has this journey been for you? And did you ever think that this growth could happen as fast as it has?
Listen, it certainly has been pretty dynamic and dramatic, but we've always been an energy infrastructure company. We had a lot of success in that for a long, long time. We have built and developed and owned and operated pretty much every kind of power that we have in the States. We were the first sort of behind the meter, if you will, at a nuke site facility in Pennsylvania. But we built, owned, and operated solar, hydro, coal, gas, wind. We're energy infrastructure folks. That's how we think. So for us, the conversion into a data center company was really about, how do we find the most value for our megawatts? We were a Bitcoin miner, if you will, for a very short period of time because it was just a very good, flexible load, and it enabled us to sort of convert our energy that was stationary into something that was portable and liquid at a time when the markets were otherwise not allowing that. But we always liked long-term, high-quality off-takers. We wanted to marry that with our own power generation. We've been able to do that. I think our execution team is the best in the business. So I always thought we would continue to be successful. But to be honest with you, we're in the early stages of, what has got to be the most important industry, in the world right now. Certainly critical for the United States, which is data center development for high power compute. And we're there and we can execute, and we're happy to be part of it.
Absolutely. So speaking about that industry, high performance computing data centers, was that always part of the plan? There's some leaders and some founders in your space that said when they started their companies, they always saw the future need for these large scale data centers, compute data centers. There's a lot of other companies in the space that just kind of seem to have gotten a little lucky, right? They had the Bitcoin mining infrastructure, and then when the AI opportunity arose, they pivoted, transitioned into it. Was that a similar case for TeraWulf, or did you see the need back when you started the company?
I don't think anybody saw the need for hyper compute AI to the level that it's reflected in the marketplace today. What we did see was that the market was evolving for energy, and having, if you will, a Bitcoin facility. It's an early stage data center, right? That provided an opportunity to have a customer for your electricity, particularly if the energy was otherwise stranded. High power compute enabled us to go back to what is the business we've always been in, where when we were developing power plants, we would marry a long-term fuel supply agreement with a long-term energy off-taker often a utility or a municipality or even a sovereign. We would then build the facility and we would operate it super efficiently and we would finance it super efficiently. We're in the exact same business today, right? We have a long-term energy agreement into a site. We have a long-term off-taker of that in the form of data, right? They're high-quality credits. We then build the facility, we finance it efficiently, and we operate it efficiently. So we're in the exact same business. I can't tell you that we saw HPC AI coming down the road, but we were monitoring what is the best way to employ or deploy our megawatts to get the most value. And then, here we are today. We have great customers. Anthropic is one. Google, in a relationship with FluidStack's another. Core 42, G42 is a third. We're very, very excited about the opportunity set for our existing power infrastructure.
Gotcha. Yeah, and it's been incredible execution. So before we get into the customers, because I definitely want to ask you about that, the market in general, let's say over the last month, 2 months, has kind of punished a lot of the AI trade. And it's not just the former Bitcoin miners, right? It's across the whole stack, the neoclouds, memory, storage, photonics, et cetera. But when I zoom in specifically on TeraWulf, it seems as if the fundamentals just continue to improve, right? You guys are increasing your contracted capacity, just got the landmark, as we were talking about, 20-year, $19 billion deal with Anthropic at roughly $2.4 million per megawatt, which is very high in the colocation space. De-risk the balance sheet with the sale of the Abernathy site in Texas, and just continuing to target around 250 to 500 megawatts a year in annual capacity. So what is it that, why do you believe that the market has gotten this one wrong?
Paxton, I got to be honest with you. As CEO of the company, my focus is entirely on creating long-term value for shareholders and execution. And, the market can go up and down, and there could be a multitude of reasons why the markets go up or down or value a space in a particular way at a particular time. I care in the sense that I have shareholders that I really value and that we hear from. And I want to ensure that everything I do is focused on building long-term value for them. So I can't really respond to sort of the day-to-day or intraday movements of the stock. I know that, as an example, my CFO, he recently, some of his stock RSUs vested, and he paid tax rather than net settle because he's a long-term believer in the value of TeraWulf. I would tell you, I think I'm the largest shareholder of the company. I'm very excited about where we're headed here. So, I guess you really worry about price at a moment if you have to sell stock. But we have a fortress balance sheet. Patrick Fleury, our CFO, he's a monster, and he's built an unbelievable balance sheet for us that enables us to sort of, we have all the cash that we need to move forward with what we've told everyone our plans are right now. So not terribly worried about raising capital. So I'm not terribly worried about the price of our stock, but I am worried about execution. And as long as I could do that and explain it to my shareholders, then I think we will win.
I'm personally not worried at all either. You guys are continuing to execute. And speaking of that execution, let's talk a little bit about the most recent deal that you guys came out with. So if we go back to around February of this year, Q4 2025 earnings call, you said on the call that you're very optimistic about targeting a lease sometime in the second half of 2026. Q1 call, you reiterated that same tone. And then, of course, in July, come out with the big deal with Anthropic. So I'm wondering, back during that Q4 call earlier this year in February, was Anthropic always the customer that you guys had in mind, or were there potential other tenants and negotiations going involved that site? And also, how long were you guys in contact with Anthropic before the deal materialized?
As you know, Anthropic is an end user of our existing Lake Mariner facility and the transaction with FluidStack Google. And, they're a remarkable company. I mean, their employees are smart as all heck. They culturally are very decent, respectful. They're human beings. They They want to learn about the space with your team on the ground. They're just great people. So sure, I mean, I think they're going to be the largest company in the world when they do their IPO at some point here. So I'm pretty excited about them as a long-term customer and as a relationship. So we would always have them in the mix. We had other parties that were interested in the spot. But again, when you build one of these things, Paxton, it's hard, and you have to really be very thoughtful about your reference design and what's this, what's the culture of the party you're entering into a 20-year contract with. So we felt very, very comfortable that they were the right folks for this site. We ran a pretty competitive process, but Anthropic had real need for this opportunity, and they were willing to work with us on terms that make sense for our shareholders. Ultimately, I believe that we ended up with the right party for that site to provide max return to our shareholders.
As far as the, I guess, negotiation process in comparison to some of your previous customers, the Fluid Stack deal and the Core 42, with respect to Anthropic, was there just a different type of level of customization working with one of the frontier labs? Was that whole process vastly different from the previous negotiations and structures?
Yes and no. I mean, yes, in the sense that we're dealing directly with them now as opposed to sort of through a Fluid Stack. And yes, because they have particular desires as a lessee as opposed to just an end user of a facility, in terms of what they'd like to see for the long-term development of the site. But no, in the sense that, I think Fluid Stack, who's also been a great customer and a great partner, they're very close to the folks at Anthropic. And I think that, so there was a lot of sort of, okay, we did this before, do you want to do that again? So it wasn't just sort of wash, rinse, and repeat. There was some new elements to it, but it wasn't hard. I think it was a little bit simpler in this fact that there were just less folks at the table, and that direct dialogue is enabling, right? So, but we've had a lot of experience building out at Lake Mariner together with all the parties that are interested in that site. And so it was a little bit easier this time around. I also think that we had a reference design. When we started out at Lake Mariner, there was no reference design. Now we have one, so we're better at figuring out how to work with our customers.
Does that have a little bit to do with the speed from acquisition to the lease signing? Because I just want to paint a picture for the listeners. So TeraWulf came out and acquired the Hawesville site in February of this year. And then less than 6 months later, announcement, fully contracted lease with Anthropic. That timing is pretty crazy. And I give you guys a lot of props for that. We don't see a lot of companies doing it that fast. And I mean, you guys have even talked about that in your marketing efforts, right? TeraWulf, built for speed. And just the fact that there's some companies in the sector that, have acquired sites way longer than 6 months ago, could be a couple years ago, and have still yet to contract that into revenue. How are you guys able to just move this fast?
I think it was three things. One is we've had a lot of lessons learned from Lake Mariner. So we're able to sort of close out issues with our customers that we were talking, or prospective customers that we were talking to, just much more efficiently and quickly. Two, we knew the customer, so we were pretty aware of what their hot issues were. They were aware of what our sensitive points were. So it just got to be sort of, we got there quicker. But third, I think the biggest thing there, Paxton, is the site. Our team, and I give a lot of credit here to Nazar Khan, co-founder, and his whole team, James Kasurgis, Kerry Langlis, our chief strategy officer. Our team picked a site which had just a tremendous amount of inherent energy infrastructure. It was there on site, in shape, ready to roll. And that enabled us to sort of be able to go to our prospective customers and said, look, this is what we got. And this is when you'll get power. And this is the equipment and the generation that will support your facility. I think the primary key to being able to get this done in what I thought was a pretty good period of time as well was the site. our team really did a good job selecting that site.
Would you say it's realistic to replicate that same, sub 6 month time frame with some of your development sites that you currently have? I mean, as an investor and just a follower of the company for many years, I kind of get a little bit excited hearing you guys talking about the Muskie site. And, although that I understand the timeline for the power and energization is a little bit later in 2028, if I start playing with my mind, right, and thinking about that 6 month timeline, you acquired Muskie in May. So if I apply that again, I'm thinking maybe a contract to come at the end of the year, beginning of next year. And just in general, is that timeline replicable for the rest of your development sites and moving forward as a company?
Every site is different. And Patrick Fleury and Carrie yell at me all the time because I've sometimes, out of my own passion and enthusiasm for the business and eager to be, beyond transparent, I've given timelines probably that have been limiting. So I don't want to do that, but I will tell you this. I think our approach to these sites, the criteria that we seek in a site, our ability to negotiate and work with utilities, the fact that we're not behind the meter guys, we're in front of the meter development. We want to contribute to the grid and work with the grid. I think that enables and the fact that our sites have all this energy infrastructure, that enables a more prompt dialogue with potential customers. And as I mentioned on our earnings call, our Muskie site, it's the most active data room we've ever had. So we're hopeful that we could sort of end up after a very competitive process with the right customer and bring that home within a reasonable period of time.
Just to touch on that transparency, I think that the retail community and just investors, they really do appreciate that. So I want to say thank you for that. One last question regarding Anthropic, and then I'd love to talk a little bit about Muskie. So the company has said that the Anthropic lease at the Justified Data Center will be backed by an investment grade credit. So if we think about the FluidStack lease, that was largely bankable due to the Google backstop, but Anthropic itself, they're not publicly rated. So is that support coming from Anthropic's own credit profile, or is there a hyperscaler involved like a Google or an Amazon?
Listen, I think it's entirely possible that a additional party could get involved from the financing perspective, but that's up to Anthropic, and we have mechanisms within our lease to ensure that we have an investment grade credit support for the contract. So I can't speak for Anthropic and how they want to problem solve that, but I think they're working on that and running sort of their own process to determine the most competitive way to achieve the investment grade support for the contract, but it's a commitment. We're very excited about it, and Patrick Fleury is working with them sort of on a day-to-day basis.
Gotcha. So now let's talk about Muskie, Kentucky. It seems like that is an area that you guys are really, really enjoying. What is it about Kentucky and just that power footprint that you guys are building there?
Well, first off, that our approach has been to sort of to have regional diversification of our sites and facilities. So that was one reason we went to Kentucky. Another reason is it's a very good state from the perspective of attracting labor, which is a gating issue in the space. It's got an outstanding governor and Governor Beshear, who's really in the weeds. His whole team is quite sharp. They're very progressive with respect to wanting to bring responsible businesses to the state. Third off, we're at a site where we could sort of take over old industrial infrastructure and turn it into something that's very valuable for the local community, for the state, and also for our shareholders. It's in the middle of the country. It's great from the standpoint of customers seem to want to be located there. They like it there a lot. You saw a recent announcement by the federal government of the Paducah site in Kentucky as well. So I think we've got the two prime sites here between Hawesville and what we have going on in Muskie. We seem to have a tremendous flow of interest with people that are reflecting that interest in their activity in the data room and the kinds of discussions that we're having. I think Kentucky's great, and we will continue to seek locations that meet our criteria, both with, good permitting, good labor, energy infrastructure, stable political, and regulatory programs, as we continue to diversify.
Gotcha. And now, as far as Muskie goes, how have the conversations been with potential customers, if you can comment on? Are there customers reaching out to you guys right now, and are you in negotiations for that site?
Yeah, as I mentioned, it's very active. We've received tremendous interest, the most interest we've had on any one of our facilities. The business is maturing. I think the customers are figuring out what they want, and they've done a good job of sort of refining that, and they want Muskie. So we're talking to the customers that are consistent with what Patrick Fleury has always said is, our requirement. We want the highest quality credit to be our off-taker, and we need to sign a deal that we could finance efficiently in the marketplace, which requires a great off-take, and it's got to have the right duration, and it's got to be consistent with what we think we could build. And again, we've told the market we're at 250 to 500 megawatts a year. We're going to be at least that. But interest is very significant.
One thing that I noted on the recent earnings call was your comments on Muskie, specifically that given its near-term power availability, you're pretty optimistic about potentially expanding the site to 2 gigawatts, and also accelerating parts of the development timeline. So what does that timeline look as of today?
I think that we've contemplated initial electric service, I think, in the fourth quarter of 28. And I think, we've already secured 1 gig of power. And, in working with the utility and understanding the grid and the sources of generation that are available, we're very confident that, that site is scalable up to as much as 2 gigs. We don't want to put the cart before the horse. We want to focus on what we have right now as we continue our development activities. But we're highly confident that site could scale up.
And then as far as that 1 gigawatt that you just said is currently contemplated, that's fully secured with the grid?
Yeah, we're in great shape on that. It's contracted, we're secured, and we're very focused right now on 27, 28, and 29 power.
One of the biggest elephants in the room for a lot of these data center operators, data center companies, is just the pushback, right, on these large scale operations. Specifically, we're seeing it all across the country, from the statewide, local level, state, and also even the national level. Most recently, the Governor Abbott in Texas, he had his statewide data center audit. And then most relevant for TeraWulf is Governor Hochul's New York statewide data center moratorium. How does this affect a little bit of your operations currently and just moving forward with future growth plans in New York? Do you see it as something that actually benefits a pretty well-positioned, already permitted company like yourself and TeraWulf?
Yeah, first of all, I welcome the executive order. We have said for years now, we welcome smart, intelligent, thoughtful regulation. We thought it would always come. And by the way, it's not just New York, it's everywhere, right? So the guys that are out there that are hawking, hey, we're at this part of the country because we don't have to deal with that, that's kind of silly. I think at the end of the day, this will be commoditized. Everyone's going to have to be thoughtful and responsible with respect to data center development. And that is what TeraWulf is first and foremost. The executive order doesn't impact our facilities. We're in great shape. We are continuing to move ahead at Lake Mariner, and we're certainly working hard on the development of Cayuga, which is the Hawkeye facility. I think the state needs to establish some pretty good guidelines, but the professionals in the state that do that, they're not politicians. They're really smart people. They're grid operators. They're engineers. They're environmentalists that work with a company to ensure that a project is consistent with best practices. for development. And, that's what we're doing in Lake Mariner. We will be doing it at Hawkeye in Cayuga. And I think what you see happening is a lot of governors are coming out, whether it's Governor Abbott or Governor Moore, and they're all calling for not a ban on data center development, but responsible data center development. And I think that's good because, to be honest with you, it was getting a little bit silly. Every real estate guy who had saw a transmission line thought he had a data center site. And that's just not the case. There are sites that make a lot of sense because they have existing energy infrastructure. They're supported by a surplus generation capability of a sustainable sort of type of generation. We pick our sites very carefully on some of those very important criteria. So I think we're all going to get to the point where there is thoughtful regulation in the space. And we are developing our plants well and beyond whatever criteria some of those regulations may be or look like, because we've always done that. I mean, we're in Kentucky, we took over an old aluminum site. We're cleaning it up, right? We're investing in the grid. In Maryland, we've got a liquid fuel burning power plant there that we're going to clean up and turn it into gas, which is super clean. We're going to be a surplus generator in the state, which is desperately short of electricity. And we're going to create jobs at what is, a former coal-fired power plant that was shut down a long time ago and is an eyesore for the county and the state. At Lake Mariner, we mitigated the largest coal-fired power plant, in the state. We turned it into a tremendous amount of jobs. We turned it into, the facility is unbelievable, and we're generating revenue for both the community and the state. So I think there's a right and a wrong way to do it. TeraWulf's doing it the right way, and I think everybody's going to have to figure out how to do that.
Right. Well, you're a power guy. The company in general are power guys. You're not, as you said, the real estate developer who has a transmission line on his property, right? So I think that again is a reason why just the market in general has really favored TeraWulf this year, and it kind of sniffs through, should we say, the bad actors. As far as the water side, Patrick Fleury, he was on X Space with a lot of retail shareholders. He was talking a little bit about kind of alleviating the concerns that most of the media, most of just individuals that might not know enough about the space on the water side. So at your Lake Mariner facility, day one, he said you guys went in, you put about 10,000 gallons of water into the site. The average swimming pool in the United States is anywhere between 15 to 20,000, so a little less than the average swimming pool. And since then, you've only needed single digit gallons of top off due to evaporation. Why do you, and that's because of the closed loop system. So why do you think that just the mainstream media and a lot of people get this fact wrong? And is there anything else that you can touch on as far as that closed loop system?
It sells hits. Listen, social media is a great thing. It enables the word to get out, but sometimes people can abuse it and use it to sort of just sell their perspective. The answer is we're at closed loop systems. We're not heavy water users. We make commitments in the communities that we go to about what that is. You have to go through a planning permit process. Means you get a permit on the back of certain assumptions, one of which will be water use. So the notion that, we're doing that it's kind of silly. The second issue is take a look at our sites. All of our sites are former industrial sites. It's not like we've gone in and we're taking this beautiful farm field or green space. We've gone into these kind of hardened industrial brownfield sites, and we're trying to turn them into something that's valuable for the community, valuable for the state, valuable for our customers, and valuable for our shareholders. And so I think that, we just need to be, it's hard, Paxton, to sort of look at every Instagram and Facebook post and just say, no, that's not right. No, that's right. What we have to do is, and I believe the burden is on us, is we have to do the very best job we can of going into the communities where we're siting our facilities and explaining to them what we are doing. There are some people we're never going to win over, Paxton. They just got it in their head. It is what it is. But we are happy to work with everybody because we have to submit all these permitting plans to show them, hey, we're not using, water beyond this, or we're not destroying, the environment because we're not making noise or we're not radiating. We have to go in and educate the community as well as, and by the way, when the customers sign up with you, they want to know you're doing that too, because, these companies are very socially conscious. Google is very sensitive to the type of generation that they use and where they're siting their facilities. They are very socially aware and want to do the right thing. Anthropic, very much so. So the customers care just as much as the residents of the community where you're building a facility. Don't forget, our people live in those communities, right? I mean, they live there. They raise their children there. They have their farms there. They hunt and fish there. And if anything, we are about our people. It's a very strong component of the culture of TeraWulf. So we're very sensitive to what goes on there. We just need to do a better job of explaining to everybody what goes on there.
Gotcha. And I'm sure you guys you're getting ready for the next batch of explaining to do with Morgantown. You guys got the FERC approval, acquisition of the site. Congratulations on that. Pretty meaningful step in the right direction. What do you see as the next steps as far as regulatory and just different hurdles you guys have to go through with that site to get on to the broader development?
So we just got Federal Energy Regulatory Commission approval to buy the site. There are closing conditions with the seller of the site that need to be met. And I don't want to comment sort of on those, but
Understood.
Theoretically, the seller and the buyer should be able to find solutions for that stuff. And then we get going. And, that site, again, is already generating a little over 200 megawatts of power. But we're going to be developing a power facility. We want the support of the agencies within the state to be able to do that. Those agencies have rules and regulations we follow in that development effort. At the same time, we're excited because we're sort of meeting we're meeting and exceeding the highest bar of expectations for any agencies within the state for the development of a data center and a power plant there. So 1 gig site, very exciting. Clearly, there are going to be people that want to line up against it because they just want to line up against anything or they want to line up against data centers. We will work hard to help them understand how we're improving what is currently on site and bringing it forward for the next generation. And we'll develop that power plant. Listen, Paxton, we were in the power development business for 25, 30 years. We have had to work with regulators. Now everybody seems to sort of want to pick on data centers. For a long time, they wanted to pick on power plants, right? This is not the first time we've had to go in and work with regulators as well as the local communities and find a way to make good progress, but do so responsibly. That's our intention.
So, Paul, the power generation is, as far as the Morgantown site goes, it's pretty clear to me from what I've gathered that TeraWulf, and as you said, is not very interested in just traditional behind the meter generation. I heard Patrick Fleury, he talked a day or two after the earnings call last week in an interview saying how just there's some issues and conflicts of interest with behind the meter, one being lots of different OEMs and peaker configurations. And then you just have different equity ownerships and construction partners on the data center side. So it gets messy. The approach that you're taking with Morgantown, it seems as if you guys are completely alleviating all those concerns that you get with behind the meter, but you're also addressing the reliability and the political concerns of being a net provider to the grid. Can you just explain a little bit about how that process works?
I don't love behind the meter. I don't think customers really like it, and I think it provides almost like increased risk for a single point of failure in case your power generation is not available. That's one point. The second point is, you know, listen, this may sound silly to you. I could eat alone every night for dinner, but instead I go to a restaurant. Why? Because I like to chat with people. I like to learn. I like to see what's going on. I like to try different things. When you are a significant member of a community, which is what you are when you're investing billions of dollars in a data center, okay, then you ought to be part of the community. So we look at it as a responsibility incumbent upon TeraWulf to sort of aid and support and help the grid. If we could do that, then we're participating in the community at large. And so I just like the way we approach it, which is build a data center with grid power. And as well, if we need to add nameplate capacity or surplus generation, first off, that's something that TeraWulf is uniquely well positioned to do because that's all we ever did for 25 years, power development. But B, we would like to build that power instead of feed our data center with it, get it to the grid, and then have a contract with the grid. We think that's the right way to work. I think it's better socially. I think it's better from a regulation perspective. And I think it is the most efficient ultimately in terms of reliability and pricing. So that is our approach. And we're excited about doing that at Morgantown and probably some other sites. You know, we're certainly going to look at surplus generation at Hawkeye, which is the Cayuga site in upstate New York. And as we look to expand our sites in Kentucky, we may add generation to those sites as well, depending upon the requirements and needs of the grid and the utility.
Is it safe to say that that framework, that model that you guys are creating also can save hyperscalers and potential customers a lot of money throughout the year?
I think so. I think it is the way to ensure reliable power to the data center, which is the primary concern for the data center, the tenant.
As far as the site goes, you've talked a lot about these industrial locations. So to me, it's very clear that TeraWulf, your expertise, what you guys are very good at is identifying, acquiring, and redeveloping these brownfield industrial sites. I'd go as far as to say and argue that there's no one on the planet who does it better than you guys. But just seeing the sheer demand for compute and just moving into the future, the potential gigawatt shortfalls that all these investment banks and just the grid is seeing in general, would you rule out a possibility of potentially looking into acquiring greenfield sites as well, or is it just you haven't gotten that far and right now it's completely sticking with brownfield?
We're happy to do greenfield. We've done greenfield power development. We're happy to do greenfield data center. But in my opinion, one of the values that we bring to the table, and it certainly helps speed to power, is we're going into sites that have, this tremendous investment in energy infrastructure. And that is really critical. Second thing is, if you take a look at what's happening in Texas, right? The batch system. The world is not about what batch you're in. It's about contracted power, So and that is really an issue for the customer today. So I like the notion that everybody thinks the answer is in ERCOT when, I think you have almost 2/3 of the installed capacity in batch zero. It's going to take years to build out. The question is, when can you have power so you can energize, and is it contracted, right? And so for us, these brownfield sites are very enabling. And they're the quickest way to get to the solution for the customer.
Well, that's TeraWulf's edge right there. So that's going to make for a really nice clip. Now, looking outside the United States, there's been a number of, you could say, competitors or friends in the space that have started to acquire sites in regions outside the United States, like Europe, APAC. It feels as if demand is starting to accelerate over there as well. Earlier this year, Anthropic did a memorandum of understanding with the Australian government. Microsoft invested around almost $20 billion to secure compute there as well. And of course, Europe. Is expanding outside the United States part of the plan for TeraWulf? And if so, how soon do you think that an acquisition in a region like Europe or Asia Pacific could happen?
The answer is yes. Inference is local, if you will. So, to the extent there are needs in Europe, we're going to be there. We've developed power plants throughout the world in our past. Just a tremendous number of countries, from a power development perspective. So we're highly confident we could do the same. It's going to be focused on the right regulatory framework. It's going to be focused on labor availability, but we're certainly looking in Europe. The team that focuses on next opportunity is led by Carrie Langlis, our CSO, and I know she's looked at quite a few projects, both in Europe and in the Gulf region. And I think we've got one or two that we really like a lot. And, we don't go into these things blind. We talk real time to prospective customers. We have a group that just does that sort of every day about what their needs might be. And we try and be thoughtful as we think about what that next site ought to be or where it ought to be, and matching that with the customer. So, yeah, I don't think we'll go international because we want to go international. I mean, but I think we'll go there to meet the needs of a customer, and we'll be highly, highly selective of a site if we end up with something over there.
So we're getting ready to wrap up here. I just want to ask you a couple more questions before we get out of here. You guys have done a lot as a company. You've won a lot. You've experienced a lot. Just as Paul Prager, the former naval officer, you yourself, what has been one of the most, the coolest or most memorable, rewarding moments as the CEO of TeraWulf over these last 5 years?
I had two that I could think of. One is, I can't explain this to a guy, but I have the most remarkable team. We have no turnover. So I'm with people, I worked with Nazar for 25 years, Carrie for almost 18, Stephanie Fleischman, our general counsel, 20, Barbara Giltonen, our chief risk officer, 25 years. Patrick Fleury, our CFO, he was my partner when he was at Blackstone. We were managing a fleet of power plants for him. Sean Farrell, our chief operating officer, was my guy at Siemens. We worked together for 12 years before he's been on board. He just got married, by the way. He reminded me he's been with us now 4.5, and before that he was my guy at Siemens for all my facilities. So our team has been together, and by the way, that is throughout our organization. I have grandchildren of previous power plant operators at my site at Lake Mariner. This is very much a family kind of business, which is so rare to have in a public company. So I was just recently, this last week, I went to our sites for a tour. I do that. And, we've really delivered something special to Google FluidStack and Anthropic up at Lake Mariner. And just to see it and to have it operate and to walk around with my troops and to know that we've been together this whole time. And we took, an old coal-fired power plant that the state didn't want, and we turned it into something that is just remarkable. That was a highlight for me. Second thing is, when we took the stack down at that coal-fired power plant, this massive stack, we brought it down in the middle of what is otherwise beautiful country on the shores of Lake Ontario. That was the moment, if you will, where I said, that's what we were. Now we're on the path to what we're going to be. So,
what year was that?
It was just a few years ago. It was very exciting at Lake Mariner. The videotape is great, and you should contact, I don't know who you talked to at our Chloe or somebody to get the video of that. It's really cool.
I'm going to email her right when we get done with this. Yeah, that's awesome. So TeraWulf, your employee, you don't even look at them as employees. These are, as you were saying, it's your family. It's a very family-oriented company. You do have a family yourself, Paul Prager. What do they think about the success and how wildly successful this company has been, specifically just the growth over the last 5-6 years?
I don't really think they do. I got 4 grown kids. They're all interested in their own things. They're very ambitious. But we had a lot of success this leadership team developing power. So I think, I'm in the office 7 days a week. I'm in 7 days a week. I'm Saturdays till noon. I'm Sundays till noon. I start again up Sunday night. We, the whole team is just, it's a tight-knit bunch. We all know each other's kids, and I just came back from my chief operating officer's wedding. I gave a toast. I mean, we're a tight bunch. So I think from a family perspective, their view is, dad's going to work, and he's, I'm the same. I haven't grown taller. I haven't lost any weight. I look exactly the way I looked, 10 years ago before all this. So I think the answer is, they just let me do my job, and they respect the commitment I have to the business and to the people in the business. And likewise, they love the people in the business. This is their family too. So I'm very lucky in that regards. And I'm really lucky that, they're all smart, ambitious kids, and they're very supportive.
Last thing, there's a lot of TeraWulf investors, retail shareholders, and followers of the company, followers in the sector in general, that follow me. They're going to be listening to this podcast. You have their ear right now. Is there any last words that you want to share with them?
I thank them for their confidence. I mean, at the end of the day, we are going to deliver. We live every day with the concern of, we got to execute, we got to execute, we got to execute. And as long as we do that, nobody will be disappointed. Sure, there'll be those times when the market is the market, and people will like the new shiny toy more than they may like us. But our day, every day, is to push that nickel up the hill, build state-of-the-art, high-power compute AI facilities for high-quality credit customers. I have a lot of confidence in our team. We have the sites, we have the capital, we have the people, and we have the customers. So I just need to worry about those four things, and as long as I do that, we're going to win. But I really appreciate the guys that have bet on us today.
Paul, thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming on the show. Looking forward to the growth going into next year and beyond that into 2030 and on. So thank you very much. Congratulations again.
Thanks. Nice to meet you, Paxton.